Okay then, the June Joust is over. Yes, we're out of our hero pools now, and the June Joust has provided us with some very interesting information on our teams, isn't it? Because this has been, especially the final, has been one of the greatest matches in Overwatch League history, in my opinion. Especially for one of the teams in terms of their adjustment mid-match, and how they learnt things and learnt to counter their opponents. It's quite incredible, and it shows quite how good Overwatch can get at the highest level. And yeah, June Joust has been fantastic, and these finals really have been as well. We've got a few matches to get to of course, and you know, some teams have done better than others. So we started off with New York Excelsior and the Atlanta Reign. So the Atlanta Reign, the kings of the Orisa Rush comp, and they've made it work, they've done very well with it, and it's got them to this June Joust, where, you know, they ended up knocking Shock out to get to this point alongside the Boston Uprising. That's no mean feat in itself. They go up against New York Excelsior. New York Excelsior, this team that, well, they beat the Hangzhou Spark. That's the highlight of their June Joust so far. The Hangzhou Spark were the #1 seed in the East region, but they faltered against the NYXL. NYXL have been steadily improving off the back of Flora, increased great play from Yakpun, especially on that Winston. And it's just been clicking for the New York Excelsior recently, which is something we didn't really expect to happen with a new, young, up-and-coming squad with little experience, but they find themselves in a very heated and pressure-filled situation in Hawaii. So it was going to be very interesting to see how these two newcomers to our format in the Hawaii setting were going to do. So it's, again, a tale of one team possibly a little bit out of their depth. This ends in a 3-0 for the Atlanta Reign. The Rush comp is very prevalent for Atlanta Reign. Excelsior kind of got drawn into it. But on Lijiang, which went 2-0 to Atlanta Reign, especially on Lijiang Garden, we see Atlanta Reign play the more meta style, the dive with the Echo Reaper, which is so heavily common right now. And the Excelsior decide to go with the bull, and it's rather interesting. It doesn't work for them. The Atlanta Reign are just better on that Winston comp, and it just gets so much more value for the Atlanta Reign. They end up outdoing Excelsior, and at every turn, Atlanta Reign just were better than Excelsior. Even though we do see both Anubis and Numbani, the maps 2 and 3, finished by both teams, it does end up with Atlanta Reign winning it out in the end, especially Anubis. They ended up capping 4 points, and Excelsior never capped the third. So it's a very difficult look for Excelsior. It drops them straight to the losers bracket, where they'd face an inevitably very much more difficult opponent than Atlanta Reign in the Shanghai Dragons or the Dallas Fuel. And Atlanta Reign, great look for them. It continues their dominance that they've been seeing in the June Joust knockouts so far, and it put them on a really good trajectory. And they hadn't lost anything moving over to Hawaii and having the pressure on them. They really hadn't lost anything to this point, which is really good. Excelsior, the worries did creep in though, and this is what we were worrying about when we saw them qualify for this Hawaii tournament. Were they going to be out of their depths? It looked like it. It really did look like it. Then we move on to the rematch of the main Melee final. Dallas Fuel versus Shanghai Dragons, and these are two teams that are just, we know this is going to be a battle for the ages. We really, really do. And these are the two best teams in the league right now. That's for sure. But this match really didn't seem like it. This ended in a 3-0 for the Dallas Fuel. And at this point, we were worrying. Because who was going to stop Dallas? Was it Atlanta? Because Shanghai, they just couldn't. They honestly just couldn't. Dallas Fuel's incredibly aggressive rush style with the Winston just works. They catch their opponents off guard, their opponents do not know how to react. The speed of play from the Dallas Fuel is quite frankly insane. And almost unheard of at this level. At this level. When I say this level, this is the highest level. There is no other level that can compare to this. Dallas Fuel are really paving the way. And you saw the panic Dallas Fuel installed in the Shanghai Dragons. when you see Shanghai starting to move over to very unconventional comps to try and make things work. We saw Soldier 76. Quite a bit. And it was just a baffling pick. Because what happens? Well, Sparkle goes over to his even more favoured Genji. Or even a Doomfist. When the more bunker style comps come out. Which Shanghai didn't want to go to. When it goes more towards a mirror, Shanghai start to become much more, well, it becomes much closer, should we say. But Dallas Fuel always tend to grind it out. That's what happens. Dallas Fuel have this knack of doing that. You know, they didn't manage to get a point on Busan Shanghai, and then they're going 2-0 to Dallas Fuel. Then they took them for some reason to the Volskaya, and I believe Dallas Fuel have not lost Volskaya this season. And I'm not quite sure why you'd take them there after your previous experiences against Dallas Fuel on Volskaya. But inevitably it ended in a 2-1 for Dallas Fuel, and so they go up 2-0 in the series. Numbani fails to be capped fully by Shanghai, only getting 2 points, so Dallas Fuel win at 3-2. Knocking Shanghai down to a match against the NYXL, which I'm sure Shanghai weren't too worried about, you know. But this installed a fight between the 2 and 8 teams in the winners' final for the June Joust. That's obviously Atlanta Reign and Dallas Fuel. Dallas, this match was a demonstration of their power, their very, very potent power, and it also demonstrated that the Shanghai Dragons had a lot to work on if they were going to get anything from this June Joust, because inevitably they go up against a team that is either equal or better than Dallas Fuel, hence the winners' final. Even if Shanghai ran it through the losers bracket, in the final they were going to face Dallas Fuel and Atlanta Reign. If Atlanta Reign beat the Dallas Fuel, then clearly Atlanta Reign had found something that works. If Dallas Fuel win, then, well, they're going to have to somehow change this result, because otherwise it's only going one way. So, Shanghai Dragons had a lot of food for thought after this match. But, there is always a benefit to playing a good team like Dallas Fuel early on in knockout stages of a tournament. And the reason I say that is because it gives you information. It gives you the ability to react, especially when you're in a loser's bracket style of competition, when you have a double bracket, because you have a fail-safe. If you lose once, you can lose, you can learn, and you can beat them the next time you go up against them, because there will be a next time. However, in a single elimination bracket, there is no next time. It's sink or swim. So that's the benefit for Shanghai here. So Shanghai, they'd end up going into the losers bracket against NYXL. But first of all, we would see the winners' final. This would be Dallas Fuel versus Atlanta Reign. And the Dallas Fuel, they're very good at adapting their main comp, right? They're very good at adapting the Winston diva that they've been playing so prevalently because of the hero pool of Sparkle and how he can play things like Echo, but he can also whack in a really good Genji or a really good Doomfist. And when it comes to these Orisa bunker comps, the Atlanta Reign, or Orisa rush comps I should say, that Atlanta Reign like to play, the Dallas Fuel have a lovely, nice strat adapted. And that is the Doomfist. And the Genji. Because if Atlanta want to run more spam, especially with hit scan, then then Dallas will respond with a Genji. If Atlanta want to play more bunkerish, then Sparkle will play a Doomfist. It's pretty simple. Or, if it goes more conventional, then obviously Sparkle goes over to the Echo, and then we see Doha on the Reaper. And that's how Dallas have rolled for so long. And whatever Atlanta throw at the Dallas Fuel, they have an answer. And that's why this series ends in a 3-1 for Dallas Fuel. It is closer than the Dallas Fuel Shanghai match, which is testament to the Atlanta Reign, making it more difficult. And obviously Atlanta Reign had seen Dallas Fuel tear apart teams in the North American region, or the West region I should say, for, well, months now. Although Shanghai still have the same obvious information. So, Atlanta Reign's prevalence to use the more Orisa based comps really kind of helped them, but also Atlanta really looked good on the more divey sort of thing. We did see Atlanta pull out some very interesting stuff like Reaper Torb, which was clearly built to counter what Dallas Fuel were trying to do, because that's so unbelievably anti-dive. It is just, Lucio has an escape, Moira has an escape, Torb has his incredible damage output from his scrap gun and his turret, which means that you can really hassle any flankers. That's what turrets are great at. Reaper obviously is anti-dive. D.Va has the peel, and then Orisa is just, who wants to dive in Orisa? You know, who wants to do that? But in the end, Dallas changed the way they work. They changed mid-game the style of which the comp they run works. And therefore, they end up winning the war of attrition in the end. It's incredible in-game adaptation from Dallas Fuel. And right now, no other team can match it. So, Atlanta Reign end up going down to the losers bracket where they'd end up facing either Shanghai or New York. We will go over Shanghai and New York now. It is pretty simple and clear-cut, this match, because I don't think we really expected anything too different. It's very chaotic. We end up with quite a bit of ball versus ball on map 1. And it's just, Shanghai have got too much quality for New York Excelsior. It is quite obvious. And therefore, it ends up being a 3-0 for Shanghai. No one's too surprised with that. Even after the drubbing that Shanghai took from Dallas Fuel in the match previously. We did see more of the Torb Reaper, Orisa, D.Va, Brig, Moira. Brig Moira is an interesting one though. Like, that's a very interesting rush comp, not gonna lie. Especially with an Orisa, there's no speed boost. So it's a rather interesting one. But it's, when you're running a Brig and not a Lucio in a rush comp, you have no speed engage. And it just makes you so slow. Shanghai are going to capitalize on that so easily. It's just so, I don't know why the NYXL thought that was a good idea to go Brig Moira, but I don't think anyone wants to see that particularly. I'm not gonna lie. Shanghai they just end up rolling them, and it's just not pretty. New York Excelsior finished this with obviously not getting a single map on the board. I don't think that's too much of a surprise either, in all fairness. New York, they did incredibly well to get to where they got. To get to the June Joust and the tournament in Hawaii. It will inevitably, it'll give them some rep. It'll give them some nice prize money and things like that. But at the end of the day, they're up with the big boys. And the big boys were way too big for the New York Excelsior. It remains to be seen whether, if someone like Hangzhou had got to this point, things may have been different, but I'm not sure. It's a good learning experience for the New York Excelsior though, and I don't think we should ever take that away from them. It's still a very young squad, and they can use this to their advantage later down the line. I hope we get to see New York Excelsior in another tournament at some point, and they can prove and show a better performance than what they had this time, and learn from what happened in the June Joust. Early days for this New York Excelsior squad, and I wouldn't go too harsh on them. I have been seeing some people saying, overhaul the NYXL org, and I'm like, you realise this is a completely new team and you've just got to the June Joust, out of complete the blue. Like, no one expected New York to qualify. Yet here they were. So let's give New York Excelsior some credit, where credit's due. Even though they have found it very hard in this tournament in Hawaii. But now we move on, Shanghai would obviously be the ones to take on the Atlanta Reign. And Atlanta Reign, this is where things get a little bit sticky, I suppose you could say. It's a bad use of words, but again, more of the Soldier 76. Again, more of the Soldier 76 from Flatter. I don't know why, they just like running it. And it's more of a spam comp because they were playing them with the McCree on map 1. And it just makes the Atlanta rush much harder to run because Shanghai are able to gain space by putting pressure on Atlanta, and unless the Atlanta engages extremely fast, there's no hope. No hope. So this is where things get a little bit sticky for Atlanta Reign. Again, we see more of it on Hanamura, where we see the Orisa, Ashe, D.Va, Echo, Mercy BAP. That's fairly standard sort of stuff. Fairly standard, fairly for Hanamura. But then Shanghai start to run more interesting stuff. The ball for Fate, double sniper, things like that. And that's extremely interesting. Extremely interesting. Shanghai struggled. They struggled against Kai on the Ashe, and we know how good Kai is on the Ashe. So Shanghai switch it up. They go to a pocketed Ashe, stuff like that. It gets a little bit sticky, but Shanghai end up getting it through in the end. So it ends up as a 3-0 for the Shanghai Dragons. In fact, we do see, subs for Danconia. We see the changes in guard in the DPS department, where we see Edison come in and things like that. But in the end, the quality shines through for the Shanghai Dragons. And can we doubt that Shanghai Dragons and Dallas Fuel are the two best teams in the league right now? I really don't think we can. And whenever the Shanghai Dragons are asked to, usually, unless it's against the Dallas Fuel, they pull through. These matches during the June Joust Hawaii tournament have actually been much more one-sided than I expected. Especially that Dallas Fuel Shanghai match, the first one, that was much more one-sided than I expected. I even thought NYXL would take a map off of some of these teams like Atlanta and Shanghai. So it's kind of disappointing that it's been so one-sided, I'm not gonna lie. But, that just brings us to the final, doesn't it? That brings us to Shanghai Dragons versus Dallas Fuel once again. And this match will go down as one of the best, if not the best, in Overwatch League history, because my goodness me, some of the Overwatch on show is incredible. And some of the speed of this match was just incredible. Honestly, fantastic to watch. A testament to Overwatch Esports. Really, really was. Fantastic Overwatch. Let's quickly run through these maps then. So, we started off on Lijiang Tower, which went heavily in the favour of the Dallas Fuel, actually, 2-0. Not too much of a surprise, Dallas Fuel played heavily into their favoured meta, of course, and therefore, it kind of just worked. Shanghai began this match very much in the dark about how to deal with Dallas Fuel, much like the first match in the June Joust did as well, of these knockouts where it ended in a 3-0. And so, again, the map pick of Shanghai, they do it again. They take Dallas to Volskaya. I really don't know why, because it's not gone well for them. Dallas are really good on Volskaya Industries, and it goes very well for Dallas once again. 2-0 on Volskaya Industries. A thorough drubbing for the Shanghai Dragons means that they're 2-0 down at the break. Dallas are halfway there to do June Joust Championship. So, this is kind of weird. Things needed to change with Shanghai. So halftime comes around, they start to claw things back slightly. On Numbani, Shanghai managed to take that 2-1. The series becomes much closer. Why? Because Shanghai start to adapt. They start to look at the Dallas Fuel. They start to punish aggression from people like Fieldo and the Coalescences. Fieldo starts to get less value from his Coalescences on the Moira. We're starting to see Fearless get less value on his main tank because we're seeing Fate run the ball. And Fate's ball this weekend has been phenomenal. And it was causing Fearless problems. Because Fate had more survivability and a hard engage that Shanghai wanted to just eradicate someone off the map. And they kind of wanted to do that on Fielder. Get that Moira out of the way. And it's starting getting value. We go to Rialto, that goes back in the favour of Dallas, so that's 4-3. Again, a really close map, however, this means that Dallas are then on match point. This is 3-1 at this stage to Dallas. One slip up from the Shanghai Dragons, and it is all over. So, next map is Busan. This map is one of the closest maps you can come across. 2-1 to the Shanghai Dragons. It was 99-99 on the final point. Mecha Base was the that's the closest Mecha Base point I have ever seen. It's just crazy. And Dallas will be kicking themselves because they were so close to sitting at the series 4-1. So close. Then we move on. Of course, it's 3-2 at this stage. Eichenwald becomes a little less close, and Dallas start becoming a little bit panicked, a little bit worried. You can see it, and this is when the weird swap's starting to come in for Fearless. Swaps over to the ball. Obviously doesn't get as much value as he does on the Winston. Fearless has never been a stellar ball player. And then we see him on the Roadhog. And this is when you know that Shanghai Dragons, with this bull dive comp that they're running, are causing Dallas extreme issues. Obviously, Icon World finishes in a 3-2. With 3-3 at this stage, we go to Junkertown. And in the end, Dallas didn't have an answer. Junkertown finishes 2-1 to the Shanghai Dragons. They complete the 3-map win streak that they needed to get a 4-3 victory over the Dallas Fuel and take home the crown of June Joust Champions 2021. And this is a very big moment, because the way this series started out, it looked like Dallas were going to sweep the Dragons. It looked like Dallas were by far the best team in the league. But the Shanghai Dragons have demonstrated an incredible adaptability mid-map, mid-match, and you got to give credit to Moon for that and stuff. But my goodness me, this was a series beyond all. It was just crazy, and it was close. Like, it's that mecha base Busan. That was the tipping point. I think that was a not a boom moment for Dallas, but because that was so close on mecha base, they were so close to sealing it out. This is not bad for Dallas Fuel by any means. This was an incredible turn up from the Shanghai Dragons, and we are looking at our best two teams in the league by far. I think there is a big gulf in class between these two and the rest of the teams in the league right now. It means we have a definite top of APAC and a definite top of the West region. In fact, when we look at the standings now, which should be on your screen, you see that Dallas points are actually Dallas Fuel are 10 points ahead, 3 points ahead on 10 points from the San Francisco Shock and the Houston Outlaws. That's quite major. And when you look at their win-loss ratio, it's not great because of their regular season performance, but it's these tournaments that count. It's these tournaments that get value. And for the points tally, it's doing Dallas Fuel wonders. And look at the Shanghai Dragons in the East region. They are almost double the amount of points ahead of their nearest rivals, the Fusion and the Seoul Dynasty, on 11 points, and they're on 6. With the same win-loss ratio. These tournaments are insanely important. Insanely important. And it can change very quickly. One non-tournament appearance from Dallas Fuel and one win from the San Francisco Shock, and things can turn on their heads in terms of the league standings in the West. For the Shanghai Dragons, it's a little bit different, because Shanghai Dragons are building a monumental lead in terms of points in the East right now. These clutch appearances at these tournaments, both the May Melee and the June Joust, even though they didn't win the May Melee, getting that far, if they can just guarantee finals, then they are in the money big time. The standings are quite clear right now that we are seeing a big dominant West team and a big dominant East team. And then we are seeing them go up against each other in these tournaments, and it is monumental Overwatch. It is insane. So, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the Summer Showdown. I presume it's still called that. There will be no hero pool. Now, the last time we did not see a hero pool, Dallas Fuel won the tournament. The time we've seen a hero pool, the Shanghai Dragons have won the tournament. So, the question is, how has the recent change, shall we say, in the meta, because of the hero pool that was introduced for the June Joust, going to impact the league this coming month? With Reinhardt back, with Zenyatta back, it's going to be very interesting to see if teams switch back to what we were seeing in the May Melee, or whether we start seeing more of this bull comp, more of this, still keeping on with this rushy dive sort of thing. I expect Dallas to stick to their guns, but it depends what the other teams do. I'm expecting less. Well, that's for a meta preview. Anyway, that's for a meta preview. We'll have more videos coming up very soon. Team of the week, probably revised power rankings for the end of this June Joust, going into the Summer Showdown. We have reached the halfway point of the 2021 regular season. Already. Dallas Fuel, Shanghai Dragons, the teams to beat in each region. Can anyone take them down? It's going to be very interesting to see what happens, but I am going to be leaving it here for this one. All of the socials are linked in the video description as ever for Asian Gaming and myself. Make sure you follow the Twitters, join the Discords, and follow the Twitches and etc. It's all linked in the video description below. I'd be very grateful for any support you show over there. And I'll be here for the next one. That's not my outro. Hold on. Okay then. Thank you guys so much for this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.